welcome to the White Paper Review. I believe this is episode 4. Is that right, Gordon?
I think so.
Yeah. I'm Brian Boyes. This is Gordon Graham. Gordon, who are you for the 6 people that don't know who you are?
There's probably more than that in the world, but I'm that white paper guy. And for the last 20 years, I've been talking about white papers to anybody who will listen. So I wrote White Papers for Dummies,
It's a
which is
great
always
book. Do you have a copy of it?
White Papers for Dummies, and I've written over 300 of these things for clients big and small all over the world.
Yeah, yeah. He's like the white paper guy, and we say I'm a white paper guy. He's that white paper guy. That white paper guy. I'm just a white paper guy. My name is Brian Boyes. I started my career as an agency copywriter. I've kind of transitioned into longer stuff. I've written white papers, not as many as Gordon. And I've also written a book called How to Write a White Paper in One Day, which is kind of an outrageous thing, but it's kind of more at the basic end of white papers. Anyway, for the White Paper Review, what Gordon and I do, because we just love talking to each other, and we thought, well, let's record this and put it on YouTube. We each take a white paper that we think is a great example and has some things to emulate, and then we go through a white paper that it could use some improvement, or maybe we just hate it. We can't believe this thing got released by a major company. And hopefully, as you watch this, you're going to learn stuff, and you're going to improve your white paper writing, or you're going to write your first white paper. Look down below. We have some resources if you want to learn to write white papers, or just learn more about them. So Gordon, I've got the first one. It's my turn to go first. And just a moment here, I'm going to bring this up. So what this is, and Gordon, and we were just, as I was trying to fumble with this file, Gordon and I were talking about how we often show these in a 2-page. We like talking about these and showing 1 page at a time on our screens for the sake of this. Often we're looking at these as 2-page spreads if they're wide. And normally white papers are done like an up and down, like a sheet of paper in portrait. But this one that I'm talking about, as you can see on the screen, it's in landscape mode. And I know I've said before that landscape kind of reminds me of a PowerPoint, but the reason they did this, let me show you here, is when you get the PDF, over up on the left, you can see it's got navigation, and that's what it allows for. I think is why they did it this way. And so when you're in the PDF, that navigation bar is always on the left, and you can easily hop through to different parts of this report. And so what I was also telling Gordon that I have slightly cheated for this white paper. Nowhere in this report does it call itself a white paper. And of course, we talk about that a white paper is a report, but not every report is a white paper. But a number of sites that have linked to this call it a white paper. And so if it's understood to be a white paper, I think it's fair game. I liked it because it had a lot of things that are great in a white paper, that if you incorporated some things from this kind of report into a white paper, as far as being authoritative and must read, you would have a terrific white paper. Okay, so just here's the basics on it. It's 73 pages long. That's big. That's really long for a white paper. The audience is it's IT professionals, risk management, and security leaders. And the purpose of it is to give them insight into the dozens of factors that can increase or help mitigate the rising cost of data breaches. Okay, and so number one, my big thing on white papers, and I think Gordon would agree, that you want a compelling topic or no one's going to read it. You want them to see that title and just go, oh my goodness, I got to read that thing. And so this topic, the cost of data breaches, especially for IT people, I would consider must read. I happen to like white papers that play on fear. And the data breach, I like to say it's like a Stephen King novel for IT professionals. This is like horror. It's like their worst nightmare, right?
Yeah.
So I guess it's like I like to say a data breach is a scary idea, but when you see the actual numbers, like in this report, you will sleep with the lights on. Okay, so it's hit our compelling topic. and it doesn't even have to have incredible play on words or anything it doesn't have to have a lot of wordsmithing it's just the cost of a data breach. So the title is not especially dynamic or uses verbs or a long tail description. It kind of says what it is. Secondly, what I like about it is that they have information you can't get anywhere else. So they've done their own research. They've partnered with a research firm to do this. So they're not quoting other sources. They have done their own research. Plus, I mean, come on, it's IBM, so they carry quite a bit of authority. And so the doing a report like this, it's for marketing purposes, and it not only burnishes their reputation for being the unburnished expert in business computers, but it's so good that you can't believe it's free. This is the kind of report that you could put behind a paywall and charge hundreds of dollars to get. Mm-hmm. And so the other reason, I mean, it's very long, and we know that a reason to have a long report or a long white paper is you want to take people as in depth as they want to go. So you always want to give them more information as they're deciding on buying something. Now, this is an area where costs are very high. Software and hardware, it's really expensive to do IT things. And so this kind of report can sway, I'm sure, millions in purchases. So you want this to be in depth. And cybersecurity, it's quite sophisticated. And they go through, later in the report, they go through kind of all the ways you can be attacked, and they rank the most by cost and by incident. And it's just must read, really, if you have any part of your job has to do with online stuff, IT stuff. The other thing, there's no filler though. It's 73 pages, but it's all great info, and it just takes you deeper and deeper. The graphics are great. They have a great way, and we can, as I get in there, well, I'll click through. Maybe I can look at one really quick here. They have a great way of just kind of illustrating. I'm hopping down. Like, they have a very creative way of illustrating. This is the cost per breach by country or region, and it's very creative. And of course, the more it costs, the bigger. There's the U.S. With the biggest cost. And so you don't have to be. I mean, it's written in depth enough for pros, for software pros, but you don't have to be a computer whiz to understand the point they're making. And then the progression of how they take you through the data is very motivating, meaning it motivates you to action, to do something. They kind of slice and dice the different risks and costs, along with the various ways that data can be stolen. And then they average the losses. They put a dollar figure. This is amazing. They put a dollar figure on the losses. And so the whole point of this is to sell software and hardware. And of course, you want to prevent attacks. But when one loss is you're looking at mid seven figures, the idea of spending a couple $100,000 or even a couple $1 million to take that risk down just does not seem crazy. You're like, please take my money. And I wanted to say one thing. I guess I missed it at the top. They have a great. Let's see if this will take me up here. They have a really good executive summary at the beginning. So if you only have time to read the first 8 pages, you're going to get the whole picture, and then you can. I mean, here's the key findings. The cost of a breach has gone up, and it's $1 million. It's $1 million. Remote work breaches tend to cost $1 million more per breach if you have more than a certain percentage. I mean, it's kind of scary stuff. They've got a great executive summary, 8 pages. You can kind of get the idea. Then you can go down, you can drill into all their numbers, how they assess risk, who they talk to, as far as you want into the research. And then this is that's enough. Thank you. If you look at the top, this is the 17th year they've done this. And so it's amazing the equity they've built, that my guess there'll be an 18th year and a 19th year and a 20th year. Yeah. This report is so good and so go-to. People are expecting it. And so, I mean, this would be a dream for any kind of white paper or report. And I know in the real estate industry that Zillow does a similar kind of report. And so a lot of real estate agents don't like Zillow, but I'm guessing they're reading that Zillow report on, it's like their data-driven take on the real estate market. And so again, IBM being IBM, it's like, whoa, their data-driven take on this. And then finally, it's interesting. Oh, I did talk about this, the layout being landscape, which normally I don't like because it's like a PowerPoint, but in this case, it allows for really great navigation. And so my guess would be this has been very successful for IBM. They're going to continue doing it, and it's terrific for anybody that has any thoughts about cybersecurity. This would be highly, highly motivating. So I don't know, Gordon, any thoughts on this as you see this?
Yeah, it's neat that the navigation pane on the left there is actually clickable, right? So it doesn't have page numbers because you don't need them because you're just clicking around because it's more of a slightly more interactive document. But I was going to say, as someone who's worked as a journalist writing about technology issues, you got to believe when this thing comes out, every tech journalist in the world is writing a story about it. So this thing must get blasted out over the media with really hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of stories about it. And then it becomes a really useful place to go for research for the rest of the year. And I really like how there's some continuity in that really cool picture you showed us with the sort of bubbles and the different locations. It's also showing the difference between 2020 and 2021, right? So there is, if you did that as a bland, boring table, it would probably take 2 or 3 pages to sum that all up. There's a lot of data packed in there, but they've done a really nice way of visualizing it. So I have to say it's easy on the eyes, even though it's scary on the mind, you know?
Yeah, and one last thing, in keeping with what we talk about in white papers, it's not selling. A white paper is not selling. It's a report. You look, even I was going through the recommendations, and they don't recommend IBM products. They recommend they use the generic. My guess would be IBM has the top of the line for these things. And then of course, and then at the very end, they do, so just so you know who wrote it. Well, here's Ponemon, the security firm, and IBM Security, by the way. So anyway, so it's a good paper, very motivating. And by the way, this is available. Go out on the web, looking at the title, you can go out and you just enter your information and get it. So it's worth it as an example.
I'm going to get that one, Brian, because every year Verizon does one about data breaches, and they've been doing it for about the same amount of time. And I wasn't actually familiar with this IBM one, but who are you going to believe, Verizon, the phone company, or IBM, the computer company? I mean, I think that going in, they have an edge being compared against each other. And plus, they help each other. Journalists are going to be writing like, well, IBM said this, but Verizon said that. Both saw this, but neither one saw that. Like it's tremendous to have two dueling perspectives on the same issue.
Absolutely.
And they've both been going for almost 20 years. Why would they ever stop? Why would they stop now? And what a fun job that would be to be working for IBM or inside IBM and have this your job you do like all year long. Like, wow. Not bad.
Some pretty brilliant people.
So I want to show you a white paper now from a very big company, Oracle, about their really content marketing system, the Marketing Cloud, or Eloqua, which was one of the companies they bought. And when I first heard about this, I believe this was 2014 this came out. When I first heard about it, I was so excited. Look at this. How to turn one piece of content into 100. The fine art of repurposing content for relevancy and reach. Wow, I just had to see that. How can you take one thing? I mean, I've been telling people you can repurpose a white paper, right? You can repurpose it into blog posts. You can repurpose it into a podcast. You can repurpose it into a slide deck. You can write press releases about it. I can come up with, maybe 10 ways to repurpose a white paper. 100! I was ready to have my mind blown. And I'm sorry to say, my mind was blown by this. So get ready for how to turn one piece into 100. So this is a 2-page spread we're looking at. And so you've been committed to a content marketing program. Here's the scenario, your healthcare system, it's healthcare month. Okay, so they're taking us through a little they're taking us through a little story. Okay, well, that's great. That's great. Oh, steps. It's going to be step by step. Okay, step 1, know your audience. Totally agree. Step 2, step 3, choose. So far so good. This is handy. Step 4, outline how the story will differ with each content type. Okay, that sounds good. Oh, I guess we're getting into the contents now. There's numbers piling up here. Okay, so article, slideshow, Pinterest, quiz, infographic, motion graphic, video, and they show all these things going into a pump. They show something being pumped up by an air pump. And I have to tell you, they are pumping and over pumping this thing, because look, an article does not count as 1. An article counts as 4. And a slideshow does not count as 1. A slideshow counts as 3. And Pinterest does not count as 1. Pinterest counts as 4. Why didn't they count Pinterest as 20? They could have done 20 posts about through Pinterest. So, and now we get to Facebook, 21, and Twitter, 21, and user-generated content is going to be dozens. That is how they got up to the 100. I count about six different mediums here, and you could say, okay, we have a 3-part story. We'll do 3 of each. Okay, I'd give them 18. I'd be nice and give them 25. Okay, they got 25 ways to spin one idea into many. When you start saying consumer-generated content is going to give you dozens and dozens of more pieces, your balloon just popped, and so it goes on from there. Never quite recovers its credibility for me, but assessing a writer, researching, writing, editing, sure, yeah. But to me, this is the best example I've ever seen of bait and switch, right? They're telling you at the start, you're going to get 100 ways, and then they give you user-generated content for dozens of pieces. Like, that is just so fallacious. And I think that really Oracle should be ashamed of themselves for what they've done here, because they've promised this incredible big breakthrough idea, and then they've delivered the same run-of-the-mill ideas that you can find anywhere. How do you repurpose? I could have told them that, and then if you're lucky, you'll get some user-generated content. I would have counted that as one way to repurpose. I wouldn't have counted it as, what did they say, scores? So I think that this is an example of somebody well-meaning who had a pretty interesting idea, right? Or a basic idea for content marketing, the steps. They had like the 7 or 8 steps of how to do a good piece of content. And I think somebody else came in and said, oh boy, that's ho-hum. We got to pump this up. We got to pump it up, just like in the graphic. How are we going to pump this up? Well, let's tell them we can make 12 different pieces from one. That's not good enough. Let's keep pumping. Let's tell them we can make 50. That's not good enough. Let's tell them we can make 100. Well, it makes a great headline, doesn't it? Like, who wouldn't want to find out that? But it's bait and switch. And look, I'm still talking about it 8 years later. It drives people so crazy when you do this. Business, you got to remember, your prospects are busy. They have too much to read, too much to think about it, too many decisions to make, too many people sending them emails and sending them social media and knocking on their door and having issues in the workplace. They don't have time to get sucked in by a piece of clickbait. So you ruined your white paper here. You blew it for me, and you probably did for thousands of other people. Thank you very much, Oracle Marketing Cloud.
I got to say something. First, my first impression, just from the graphics, let's say I couldn't read or hear what you were talking about, it made me think of Christmas at Target. Because if you click in at the top of each page, it looks like wrapping paper. Like they took wrapping paper and just did it across the top. And then there's actually a Target logo in there. But I totally agree with you. Talk about, excuse me, talk about bait and switch. We're used to, as copywriters, we've seen those 20 ways to fix up your headline or whatever. And we know that you might have 4 good ones and the rest is filler. And then you start resenting it, actually. And it was obviously a case of somebody said, well, look, if 20 is good, right, 50 is better. But if 50 is better, 100 would be the best, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it was just
Imagine
like,
how many people will click on that if we say 100, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. So
Yeah.
just supersizing it doesn't, and people realize three really good ones would trump your 100, right? And it's like so funny, user generated content. So I'm going to put out, I don't even know what the piece of content was, an article. Oh, I'm going to
It was
get,
something about healthy heart. A healthy heart month
okay,
was coming up, right? So
all kinds of people are going to take my article and do something with it. Yeah, right. I mean,
yeah.
about 6 people are going to look at it and that's it. So,
You're talking about, like, I think they're talking about reposts, right? So you put
oh, is that
something on
what that is?
Pinterest. Well, I don't know. It's not specific enough, but you put something on Pinterest, then somebody comes
Yeah,
along and repins it, I think, and they're
yeah, but
counting that as another
as another
score
thing, as
towards
another
your,
thing.
like, why not say 1,000? Hell, why not
Yeah,
say 1,000? Because you might get some repins somewhere, or they're counting every Facebook post, every time
yeah,
somebody reposts your thing as another piece. Now, I mean, it's a repost, but it is not another piece of content.
right,
And
right.
you and how can you count on that? You know, and plus, this is B2C. Like, they're trying to sell their B2B marketing system so that people can get B2C
Yeah, that's a
users to
great
generate their
point.
own content. Like, isn't there a
It's
great
not
divide
terribly
there somewhere?
compelling.
Like,
Just you explaining it, I didn't see how that made me want to buy Oracle Marketing Cloud. I didn't see the connection at all. It seemed like a bad, I don't know, you go to, Canva. What are those places that have infographic? Um, just you can fill in
templates,
the
or
template. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's what
yeah,
it looked
yeah.
like. Someone went to Canva and spent about 10 minutes. And they were told they could not go to lunch until they came up with 100.
Maybe that
So
was it. Maybe that was it.
they're like,
These
oh
poor
crud.
saps had to
I'm hungry. I want to get out of here. That's a good bad
but
example. I
please,
love it.
yeah, yeah, please, people, do not do that. Do not do that. You will get the clicks, but those clicks will turn into against you afterwards, because you've set false expectations and you've wasted people's times and you've got them excited for nothing and then drop them out of the airplane. So please don't do that.
Well, Gordon, I love that's a great bad example, and I hope people of watching have learned both from good and bad. And I think we've said that often, white papers would be okay except for a few glaring errors. Sometimes it's just a few bad things that kind of send it off the rails. It's not that hard to fix. But anyway,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And you know what? Today's examples also underline something that we've said before, and we'll keep saying, is that it's not about a matter of how much money you have to spend, right? Like, IBM obviously pours a lot of resources into that report, and they get a good result. Oracle poured something into that report, and they got a terrible result. So in a way, I have to go back to the sort of thing that Steve Jobs said when he was talking about the difference between Microsoft and Apple. He said, well, at Apple, we have good taste. They designed things that were really well put together and really really worked and didn't make the typical blunders that people often make. So Oracle needed somebody in that workflow somewhere to say, wait a minute, this doesn't work, this isn't fair, this is going to bug people, and nobody spoke up and said that.
yeah, yeah. Has anybody thought of the poor reader? What about the poor person that's going to read this?
Yeah,
They were sort of left
yeah,
out. Well, anyway, I
yeah.
hopefully you've learned stuff, good and bad examples. If you need to, I'm guessing you're interested in writing white papers or at least learning about them because you're watching this. Look down below. We have a ton of resources to help you learn more about them. Free stuff, stuff to buy. We have both Gordon and I have tools that will help you write white papers right away. Gordon has written White Papers for Dummies, which is an excellent book. I would call that the in-depth book on white papers.
Thanks.
I wrote you just got to knock one out for the minimal learning. I have how to write a white paper in one day. It's a short book, much shorter than Gordon's, and that'll help you get your first one out. And then we have some other digital things, and Gordon has a terrific newsletter, by the way, and we have a link down there to subscribe to that. And anything else, Gordon? Other resources we should be highlighting?
Well, really, if you go to my site, there's 150 articles about every aspect of white paper, and you can look up white paper design, white paper planning, white paper promotion. And I know Brian's got a ton of really fun videos on YouTube about different aspects of white paper. So whether you want videos, whether you want a show, whether you want to read, whether you want books, we've kind of covered all those bases.
All right. Well, anyway, we thank you so much for watching this far, and be sure to hit that like and subscribe, and because we're going to keep doing these into the foreseeable future, and we will see you again on the next white paper review.